All right, guys. I think it's 9:45 now, so it's good to see everyone here. Let's kickstart our session today. So I am very honored to have my co-chair here with me today, Namrata Saroj from US, and we have a great line of speakers today. We are all going to talk about startup commercializations, the pain, the challenges, and the useful lessons. So let's kickstart with Suhil, the first talk. Yeah, Suhil, stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. I know it's still a challenging time in terms of morning traffic hours, so don't worry about the crowds coming in. Please feel free to step in and step out anytime. My name is Suhail Bidani. I lead the digital and AI portfolio for the Gates Foundation India office. I was just sharing with some of the colleagues over here. We have a startup Mahakumbh happening exactly at the same time, about 35 kilometers diagonally opposite from this venue. So you'll see a challenge in terms of just people having to sprint between two very significant events. I thought I'll just spend some time setting the context of why, not just as Gates Foundation, why I personally believe this is a great time for startups to look at new opportunities. The number of what we call AI first companies that are emerging in just the last 2-3 years globally is a significant number. And if I have to go by some estimates of AI contributing about $17.5 trillion to global economy by end of this decade, by no means that's a small number, right? So I'll just start off, I just have 2-3 slides. In terms of just the opportunity space, and I want to focus on low and middle income countries, primarily because I believe that we still have a lot more to do when it comes to low middle income countries. There's a lot of technology advancements that we've seen in high income countries. Let's not forget 6 billion of the global population resides in these global south, so to say. We just need to do a lot more in terms of meeting the unmet demands and needs that are there. The impact potential, as I mentioned, is again significant. It's something that we need to be also caring about as just good human beings, right? It's just not, technology is not supposed to just serve the people sitting in this room or watching us online right now. We just need to figure out better ways to ensure inclusive AI, inclusive use of emerging technologies. I don't think there has been a better journey that we've seen today in terms of democratization of AI tools itself. And whether you refer to what DeepSeek did or more models that are coming up from the global south, indigenous models being put as public goods out there for others to use, I think it's great, because as somebody who's been in this space for a couple of decades plus now, the thing that I fear the most is, are we going to really bridge the divide, or is technology now going to enhance the divide that already exists? So that's really something that I would look forward to. I think a couple of things I want to focus from an India perspective, and I'll come to that. But broadly, if you look at why startups need to look at LMIC space, in terms of just developing the AI tools, products, platforms, whatever you're talking about, most of the talent today you will see is emerging in the LMIC context. Just in case of India, and I don't know how many of you are aware, but India today has the highest AI skill penetration in the world. That's more than any other country in the world. And this is not my numbers or Government of India's numbers. These are by the Stanford AI Index, which measures it. We should see the updated report that will come out next week, I guess. We need to leverage that in terms of building tools. And when we build something for LMICs, I can assure you, and I'm sure there are people in this room who can vouch for that, you are also solving for a lot of problems that today high income countries also face. So it's not that you're just building it for the LMICs. Second, which people especially from India would know this very well, the digital infrastructure, the digital public infrastructure that we talk about in the context of LMICs, again is significantly better, much more efficient, just because it's more recent, and we need to leverage that opportunity. Initiatives like the India Mission, I'll come back to it in a while, or the centers of excellence that are coming up across various domains, especially health, again are opportunities for us to leverage in that sense. I'll quickly talk about more from an India context, and especially people who may not be as familiar, I'll just spend a few minutes explaining. So India launched the India AI mission last year, 7th March actually last year. In terms of numbers, it may not be significant, and I keep joking because Singapore launched its mission around the same time. The budgeted outlay for India mission in the case of India and the Singapore mission is actually exactly same. It's $1.25 billion, but obviously we know the population difference. But here is where I think India really is doing it smartly. Let's take compute infrastructure as an example, where government is not going and buying GPUs, right? What they are doing is playing a market player, aggregator role, price discovery done on the supply side. The first round itself has 14,000 plus GPU access being provided to the ecosystem. And as a startup, you can just avail those GPUs, whatever you need. Just by the way, for people who are again not aware, the price discovery led to possibly the lowest compute costs today available in the world. It's 60% discounted on global average rates. And in addition to that, Government of India will offer 40% subsidy on top of it, which makes, let's say, a H100 access, bring it down to less than $1 per hour of usage. Similarly, dataset platform, today more than 400 datasets are already there. It's been less than 1 month since it was launched. You should leverage that opportunity in terms of training of your models, validation, etc. I already talked about the center of excellences that are coming up, especially on health, where ophthalmology is actually one of the key areas being picked up as part of the COE. My final slide, very quickly, I've touched upon various things. I just want to talk about two specifically here. A, leverage the cost advantages not because of the cost arbitrage. It's again going back to my earlier point, we need to ensure this is inclusive, which means we need to ensure this is affordable. Second thing that I'll really encourage everyone in the room to consider and deliberately look for are use cases which possibly go beyond ophthalmology. And I'm sure many people in the room are already aware of advancements happening in that space, because we all know that high quality imaging data available today from the eyes tells us far beyond the eye care itself. And how do we use that opportunity is now up to us. Just one small example, and I'm throwing it as a challenge now for people in this space. We know for sure that we can start categorizing anemia looking at the eyes. We may not have the readings available, but I can possibly categorize in under high and low. This is humongous opportunity in terms of non-invasive ways of looking at anemia from a screening standpoint. Anybody working in that space, wanting to work further on this particular use case, very happy to engage. Thank you so much. That's my time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Suhail. When a Gates Foundation person tell you to engage and on a specific topic, the pockets is deep. So yeah, anyone in the room who's working on anemia in eye-related, the imaging, technology, please reach out to Suhail. And we're going to keep the questions. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people in the audience are going to ask to hear how do we apply for Gates Foundation funding. So I'm not going to get you guys a chance to ask now so that you guys will stay until the end. So next up, we have Namrata. Is it Namrata? Or we have Ming. We have Ming next up, right? The second? Yeah. According to the, well, I think any sequence is fine. Yeah, Ming. Now, yeah. Oh. Okay, I always joke with Namrata that Namrata is the first time attending APAO. She's from US and my co-chair. I told her that, in Asia, we usually go with the flow. We are quite freestyle here. We're all friends. Yeah, so next up, okay. So okay, good. So Ming, yeah, so next up is you. Namrata is supposed to introduce you, but now that you're up, maybe I continue to do the,
Slides.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can we switch the slides? Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, Ming.
In 8 minute time, thank you so much, Daniel, for bringing me in. In the upcoming 8 minutes time, I just walk you through a little bit our pain, how painful, and also excitement when we how we develop the technology and how we translate into products. Obviously, obviously, we got a lot of financial disclosure, a lot of conflict of interest. First of all, Australian government is very smart. And the way that they established this, they call it AI in healthcare project. We are fortunately, this was in 2019, we were one of the winners for this 5 million Australian dollar. So the idea is to not just fund the researchers, but also you have to have a technology partner, Monash University, for developing an AI technology, and then you have to set up a startup. With the startup, you are able to apply for regulatory approval and so on. And then the number 4 on the inner margin is a customer relationship company. You've got to make sure you are able to communicate with the customer. You are able to bring it up the revenue, for example. So with this, we consider ophthalmology is a highly image-driven specialty. There's a lot of early work they publish in high-impact journal JAMA. It's all on either dermatology or ophthalmology. We start our business from collecting massive amount of data for multiple hospitals in China. And then we also collect data with the help from Australia Health Welfare. So with this data, we are able to collect, with the help from Australia government, we're able to collect ocular imaging data and in combination with systematic, in particular the Medicare claim data as well. So in the early day, 2018, we published one of the first deep learning papers on diabetic retinopathy classification, or glaucoma, for AMD, and also one of the first paper on CNN visualization. So we also we consider the retinal vessel is very important because it's a way to indicate the level of risk of developing cardiovascular risk. But the traditional way to do this retinal vascular segmentation is use manual labeling. So instead of using manual labeling, we invent a way to use the FFA, fluorescent angiogram, as a ground truth to basically change the model to be able to segment the retina vessel. In this scenario, we are able to segment the retina capillary, very small vessel, in a very accurate level. So with this, when we are able to really quantify the retina capillary level, we are able to improve the accuracy on predicting cardiovascular risk and also other diseases as well. So, and we at the early time, like 3 to 4 years ago, we already work on the GANs models. So this idea is to use GAN technology to generate fluorescent images from a full color fundus photo. So we are able to demonstrate that in this GAN, like a fake FFA, You are able to see this, for example, this neovascularization leaking, very similar to fluorescing. So in other words, you don't have to do FFA anymore. Just based on full color fundus photo, we understand which one is the microaneurysm, which one is the neovascular. So then with this, we develop at the research level, as a research institute, we develop a research protocol. And then we try this in the indigenous population, and then we change the model of how we deliver diabetic retinopathy screening in the community level. We set up this company called iTelligence in Australia. So with this company, we're able to raise a little bit money. With the money, we then have a regulatory approval from the CEMA, TGA as well in Australia. It's quite a journey. And then we also work with our business partner, like this, at that time it's Specsavers and Bupa Optical in Australia. So we try to identify how this AI really helped them in the optometry setting. So this is an example showing that in a very busy optometry clinic, they can mix some real glaucoma patient. This can be a good great challenge. This is a way we convince Bupa Optical, the owner of the CEO of the Bupa Optical, AI can help you somehow to avoid this missing diagnosis happening. Like this is one of the examples of glaucoma. And then, when we deploy this in the endocrinology clinic, the problem is they don't have technician, they don't have necessary supporting staff. Then we develop this, we call it kiosk, AI screening kiosk. So with the voice prompt, you're able to do all these fundus retina scan without requiring a technician and without requiring eye professional to interpret the result. And then we work with a manufacturer in China, develop this solution, combining this portable fundus camera with the AI algorithm. So this is how we also expand the AI retina scan to like more using retina, in particular retina capillary as a marker to classify the CVD risk. So with that, Bupa Optical launched the first commercial product in their optical store, and they charge the member. They use this as a way to traffic the patient in, so that they can have glasses, they can have all these they help them to run the business. So this is how this Bupa report looks like. Something interesting is it end up a lot of customer coming not for diabetic retinopathy screening, is for retina age assessment. They were very keen to understand how old I am based on my retina age assessment. So then with iTelligence, this Australia local company decide to run a global expand. So the first step is we hire a very expensive CEO, this Jeff in the US. He joined the company, and we are able to open a new round of fundraise. So the new round of fundraise is from the Lovewell Health. Lovewell Health is the largest healthcare provider in New York, and the Aegis Venture is the funding. So they have a month data like from the major health service provider, and also they have a money, Aegis Venture as well. So this become an Ascertain. Ascertain is an AI company. So they raise about $100 million US. And then fortunately, they chose us as one of the projects to invest. So we built quite a large team and convert this Australia company to be a United States New York company, based in New York company, where they hire a lot of people. I think they're wasting a lot of money as well. So, but then in this big team of people, myself and Zhongyan is the only one. I just work 1 day a month, and Zhongyan work 1 day a week. But otherwise, all other people, they're all full-time. So they're working on a number of projects and also the sales as well. So they launched the product, and then there are a lot of product in the pipeline as well. So this is one of the product. So in conclusion, so in my journey, I think if you have a successful company, it's not quite bad. You have to earn a lot of money. Not yourself, the startup company have to earn a lot of money. Otherwise, your valuation would be a nightmare. But then you have to have a lot of money for fundraise as well to be able to win from all your competitor. So there's only two destinations for the startup: either grow or survive, or die at a very small scale. Tiny company, die. But then you can be also grow and survive as a very huge company, but you can also die But I would rather to die as an elephant rather than an ant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ming. That's very insightful. And now you know there's also another source of funding from the Gates, from your the speaker before you. So okay, so next up we have Namrata Saroj. So Namrata is well, I would say first timer in APAO, and hopefully we can get her to come back more often. She's a very seasoned clinical trialist in US. So I've tasked her a job to say how do we use AI to speed up some of the clinical trial use cases. So Narada, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you again, and welcome to my home city. Even though I live in the U.S., this is my home city, so it's a privilege to come and present here. So as Dan mentioned, I'm going to talk about AI and ophthalmology clinical trials, and I think I'll preface this by saying we're not there yet, but these are the opportunities that we're going to have. These are my financial disclosures. So at this point, drug development can take up to 15 years for a drug from conception to come to market. And it can cost up to $2 billion. So you can see there's a lot of time and a lot of money needed. And above all, only 10% of drugs that actually enter the clinical trial space make it to FDA approval. So it's a really long process, but with a little bit less return than we would want it to be. Where can AI step in? AI can actually step in now and help us reduce that time and subsequently reduce the time, and that's a lot of cost savings in the healthcare space. So these are the 4 pillars that I'm going to focus on today. So the number one being drug discovery. What can AI do to help initiate or expedite drug discovery? So what's the traditional method right now? The traditional method is labor intensive, it's time consuming. What AI can do is analyze vast data sets with genomic, proteomic, and reveal potential targets. Then we can take it a step further and validate those targets for outcomes as well as for finding the right patients. And what ultimately it does is we can increase the effectiveness of the trials that we do. So drug development and AI is relatively new, not yet in ophthalmology, but in 2020 there was a company that actually entered its first molecule, AI-enabled molecule, into clinical trials. And by 2023, another company now has 31 programs, all enabled by AI. So we're really making great progress here, and I'm hoping by the time we have APO next year, we can talk about an ophthalmology-driven AI product. So here's an example of work that's been done in ophthalmology. We all know about melanin in our eye. It's a biopolymer that really can help with ocular drug distribution. However, because of the low turnover rate of ocular melanonin, there can be accumulation of drug binding to the melanin, and then the drug toxicity can happen subsequently. So there's a group out there that what they did was focused on machine learning to identify peptide sequences with 3 things: high binding to melanin, cell penetration, and low cytotoxicity. With that, they came up with an HR97 brimonidine conjugate, which is an engineered peptide. And when they tested that in rabbits, they saw that the IOP lowering with this conjugate was much better than just using brimonidine drops itself. So here's an initial example of what we can do if we can actually control these peptides through AIs and make sure that they're binding with melanin at the right level. So the next one comes to optimizing trial design. This is kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis, is design trials. And trial population, as all of you know, is probably the most critical part of what we do here. Again, we have access to big data sets, so we can now use machine learning and deep learning to find the right population. And what does this population help us, doing this help us with? Reduce the heterogeneous population, right? We've learned as we've discovering more and more about the diseases that we treat that this population is heterogeneous and we need to target our therapies. And enrich the population. So there's 2 ways of enriching it: prognostic and predictive. Prognosis is choosing patients that will have the clinical endpoint that we can measure. Predictive is identifying those patients that are going to have the outcomes, and eventually this will lead to precision medicine. So Hel mentioned too, we're at the luxury of great imaging here for the eyes, right? And so capitalizing on this imaging biomarkers is going to be critical. What happens now? We have experts who actually review these images, and all they're looking for is how is it different from the normal? Well, if I have the AI-powered analysis, we can look at them much more quantitatively in an expedited manner and look at diagnosis, the disease characteristics, treatment monitoring, predictors of disease progression as well as treatment response. Furthermore, what's really important for us is now to correlate the functional to the anatomic outcomes. This is where we're struggling all. And a lot of regulatory authorities, as well as clinicians, are looking for that correlation. I think AI is really going to help us do that. Then we come to patient recruitment. So we really want to make sure we get the right patients into the trials so that we can actually run these trials in a much more efficient manner. There are two types of patient trial matching. One is trial to patient, where we're actually taking one trial and finding the right patients for it. Then there's patient to trial, where we take a patient and say, okay, what all trials can this patient be suitable for? So the NIH recently came up with something called Trial GPT. And Trial GPT is to take a patient's characteristics, and then an algorithm identifies all the trials in clinicaltrials.gov that this patient could potentially be eligible for. Not only does it do that, it also actually ranks them by relevance and eligibility. So it's a really great tool to actually, if you have a patient, to see what trials they can match up to. And this will result in low screen fail rates and eventually decrease recruitment period. So this is a case study they did, and what they found was 40 to 60% reduction in time to review this initial criteria, which doesn't seem much when you're just kind of actually looking for it, but if you take the long cases, it actually does add up to a lot of cost saving. The other way around to actually look at a trial and look at for patients for them, this is a group out of Moorfields in the UK that looked for pre-screening for GA trials based on an existing criteria for a study. And what they found was that if you just use a conventional EHR, the eligibility rate was about 40%. But they've actually used AI, the rate went up to 63%. Again, really helps increase that recruitment for these trials. So finally we come to execution. This is something that's new, that's developing at least in the US right now, and it's called Augmented Intelligence Quotient, where we're looking at how to see that, how are organizations blending AI with human expertise. And when you actually conduct trials, everything we do is human, right? So how do we bump up that AI quotient in the coming years? There is a group out of California that has built something called AI Teammates, and this is for actual execution of the clinical research. And what I want to point out is the first case study they did with a sponsor, Opus Genetics, and they saw a 50% reduction in study setup, which is a huge reduction, as well as 80% reduction in non-billable costs of CRO. From a site perspective, what they saw was also that they actually had a 90% decrease in query rates. And this is all the cleaning up the data that is so critical to trials. So the AI teammate approach is being gradually adopted. I think there's reluctance right now because of the quality, but I think eventually we're going to see more and more of this. AI in ophthalmology trials doesn't come without limitations and challenges, right? So AI algorithms are really dependent on the quality and the quantity of the data. The patients are heterogeneous here, and trial criteria can also induce significant challenges. There's limited availability of high quality data still. Computational resources can be limited, right? Some organizations don't have access to all the hardware that's needed to build this. We're definitely going to continue to have regulatory hurdles because there are no guidelines yet and they need to be established. And ethical concerns will always be there when there's actually mass access to data. Still, this is a new era of innovation and operational efficiency. We are going to start understanding complex eye disease at a molecular level, which will in turn help us develop very good target identification. Sorry, almost done. Oops. All right. Okay. And we will be able to develop novel biomarkers and therapeutic targets, and expedite the development of these drugs as well. Robotic surgery and automation is not far away, and this time's going to come. We're going to have fully digital trials where most of what we do is going to be remote. So I think in summary, with proper governance, AI will help make trials faster, more inclusive, and more successful in treatments for blindness. Thank you.
Thanks, Nam. I didn't know they're trying to do a macular society style here. Just switch off the screen and when the time is up. But anyway, yeah, great talk. So maybe we'll get Nam to start introducing the next speaker.
Sure.
Yep.
Sorry. This doesn't work. I have to use it.
Yeah.
So our next speaker is Paisan Ruambunsik from Thailand on public-private partnership in deploying AI for eye health.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction, but this is wrong. Okay. This is a wrong slide.
This
anyway.
is not the right slide.
No,
Can we
it's
switch?
Not my slide. My name's there, Paisan. Anyway, it's my honor and pleasure to be joining this wonderful session.
So Paisan, the reason why he's here, he's also been having a very long-standing, working relationship with Google. So, I mean, Thailand and India are two of the first sites that Google has done, the DR screening outside US. So he has lots of, lessons to share. So I thought it would be good for Paisan to share some of those. And of course, provided that, yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Public-private partnership, Paisan.
Okay,
Please
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Dan. Here's my financial disclosure. What's that? Okay. Well, why we need PPP, public-private partnership for AI in healthcare and in ophthalmology? Well, PPP brings us together, the government and private sector expertise to advance AI in healthcare and ophthalmology. Everybody knows AI kind of enhance diagnosis and treatment, but implementation may require collaboration between public and private partnership, and PPP may help bridge funding, regulation, and scalability gaps as well. Here are examples of some data sets in private and public sector. For public resources, you may have like NIH, All of Us Initiative, or MIMIC4, which is critical care data, and maybe chest X-ray. And for private data sets, well, the data in our hospitals, our clinics, and our research collaboration may be labeled as private data. This is example from NIH. This is kind of like open source NIH data in terms of environment, health, lifestyle, and biology. I don't know if it's still available or not in the NIH. And here's CACO, where you can access CACO, and this is data regarding cataract. In fact, it's the fundus measures of patients with cataract. You have more than like 1,000 files over there that you can use for public data set. In terms of infrastructure, here's some private sector computing infrastructure. Google Cloud, AWS, Microsoft Azure, they are very powerful for infrastructure. However, the government may purchase it as well. This is a kind of supercomputer that the government of Thailand purchased a few years ago. It's one of the fastest computer in Southeast Asia like 5 years ago, but not anymore. It's called Lanta. In terms of develop frameworks, tools, here's the job of private sector. You may have like private machine learning platform from PyTorch, AutoML from Google, and you may have like private medical imaging AI tools from NVIDIA. But in terms of regulatory and ethical guidelines, I think this is the job of the public sector, right? For example, US FDA and EU medical device regulation and World Health Organization ethics and governance of AI in health. This is the guideline from WHO. You may download it in the internet. It's a really thick document, but maybe you can use it for guidance. But you want to integrate AI in healthcare system, we need a collaboration between private and public part, and this kind of like a platform is available. However, I'm going to show you some case studies of PPP for AI in ophthalmology. Some examples are IDXDR, DeepMind, and our hospital. This is IDXDR. I think everybody knows here, right? IDXDR is the first AI for diabetic retinopathy screening approved by FDA. Actually, this is data from the University of Iowa. Actually, IDX is a private company held by built on the University of Iowa's research system. This is announcement from the University of Iowa. IDXDR actually been expedited or reviewed by US FDA. US FDA kind of helped IDXDR to be approved fast. And here's announcement from Google DeepMind. This is back in like 5 years ago. They have collaboration with the Moorfield Eye Hospital. And this is one of the projects came out of that project collaboration. This is a project that uses OCT images and making the AI for analysis on the OCT to classify retinal diseases and for referral disease as well. And here's the paper published in Nature Medicine many years ago. Now let's talk about the one in Thailand. So we have a partnership with Google for a long time. Google's AI model for diabetic retinopathy screening is called ADA. So ADA is owned by Google, right? And then Google's kind of licensed their AI model to a Thai company called Perceptor. Now Perceptor in Thailand kind of like doing a job of maintenance the AI model in Thailand. Now the AI model is in Thailand. And they have a job of process in terms of FDA approval in Thailand as well. And my hospital, Luxury Hospital, doing a job of like public deployment in public hospital. And we have another startup, which is a Softcorn, which is Thai developer. The job of the Softcorn is to develop a platform, digital platform, to integrate with AI from Google and to use for Thailand. And Department of Medical Services, which is a part of the public sector, they host Softcorn's private digital platform. But well, AI used to be in Google server, right? But now it's in Perceptor server in Thailand as well. And the screener in Thailand, they're kind of like public hospitals. Well, this is a kind of like web-based digital system that integrate with AI and many hospitals in terms of HIS and the cameras, and this is hosted in like public sector in Thailand. So we have like many part of private and public sector play roles in this AI for their screening in Thailand. Well, the company, the Softcorn company in Thailand, they when they build the digital system for integrating with AI, they build a small application. And users that use this application need to create a kind of like standardized database view. And these applications configured to use with any database management system. What is working is that, well, with the platform, when they enter the hospital number of patients and they hit a button, the platform is going to retrieve all the hospital information of the patient into the platform. The user don't have to key in all the data. That's for the integration with HIS. Well, in terms of retinal cameras integration, we have like many hundreds of cameras in Thailand. How we integrate it? Actually, if we can integrate it, because if we are able to rename the image file into this format, if the camera companies allow us to rename the file, we can use this name to retrieve the images and to connect with AI to read the images. And we scale up to use this kind of like a digital web platform, integrate with AI, with many hospitals in Thailand and the retinal cameras in Thailand for many years. In 2023, we were able to use it to like 20,000 patients. Now we are using more than 40 centers in Thailand. And well, the people, the man at the center is Yoshi Matthias. He's a vice president of Google and the head of Google Research. He came to Thailand a few years ago. And this is the historical picture of him with us. And in summary, the roles of public sector is kind of like funding and grants of AI research and regulatory frameworks. And they may determine the AI policy and national health strategies. For private sector, AI research and development may be the job, and critical implementation, scalability, and investment and commercialization as well. Well, this is the end of my slides in many of my presentations recently. Well, we're in the era of development of AI is very big and very fast. But in terms of deployment, it's very small and it's very, it's not, well, if you compare to development, it's still like couldn't catch up with development. How to bridge this gap? Well, I think one of the key factors to bridge this gap may be private-public partnership. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you. Thumbs up.
Thank you. All right, next we have Stephen Ng from Singapore for go-to-market strategies for AI and ophthalmology.
A very good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Just a brief introduction of myself. I'm actually the Chief Strategy Officer of an AI company in Singapore called AIOS. We are currently implemented in part of a national screening program, not only in Singapore, in Brunei, but also in the southern of Oman. We're actively getting into the Middle East market, such as Saudi Arabia, but that's basically a little bit about myself. This is my financial disclosure. Okay, I just want to give a brief history about AI along the way, especially from the FDA approval perspective. I mean, between 1995 to 2013, there were literally like one AI approved a year. And over the years, I mean, we have actually seen 75 being approved a year to where we are now, about 950 medical device approved towards the end of last year. That's just for artificial intelligence, not necessarily ophthalmology, but just basically the deployment of AI. And honestly, and a regulatory approval does not necessarily equate to deployment or implementation or successful implementation. Many a times it is just basically the very first step into the market. And I think everyone is very familiar with this particular chart. It's the value of death chart, where actually a lot of people will show in their startup journey. And a lot of people will say that in this chart, I think with Ming Guang and Dr. Paisan as well, I mean, it's all about money, right? And lots of money to be able to push across this particular valley. I personally have a different view. I think it's more to clinical adoption and implementation, and bring it to market that actually be able to help you bridge this gap. Because once you are able to bridge that particular gap, you will naturally be able to cross the gap, cross the valley. Okay, I think everyone is also very familiar when we are all presenting to our investors of this particular table. But honestly, I personally define the SOM as just being able to, the market you can have access through productization, regulatory approval, and being able to be plugged into the infrastructure. But more importantly, I think the SOM, from my perspective, is the ability to be able to plug directly into the clinical workflow to be used daily by the user, being able to train and change the mindset of the user. Not only that, the recipient of the report or the results, and also the compatibility with a HIS system, in addition to a very competitive landscape with all the other competitors in the market. And for a market to go from lab to from the laboratory to be able to go into the market as well, I think more importantly is first stage is actually going to be able to translate the technology into something that is a product that can be used in the market. And secondly, I think very importantly is to be able to find the reimbursement model for the deployment of your technology. And then after, with all that in place, you may be able to raise some money. And from that, hopefully with the money, you'll be able to push the product into the market to find adoption of the technology. Okay, so end of the day, we are all talking about investment, but what I've just now described earlier is very linear, but actually it's not a linear process. It is actually a very multifaceted, multifaceted process, and it all basically lumps together. It's a very compounded kind of approach to the market, where the reimbursement will actually be able to drive the mindset change of the user. And it is only with that we will be able to change the workflow to be able to find the adoption of this technology in the market. And when you are able to find all the successes in the middle, then will you be able to drive investment. Next, I'd like to touch a little bit about the current market space of where we are today. In today's world, and especially in artificial intelligence, in ophthalmology, we are basically seeing, I mean, for those that I'm dealing with and going to the market, we are basically all stuck in a single algorithm mindset, where one input to one output, or multiple input to one output. But where does that actually head towards? As I mentioned earlier, right, honestly, the SOM, as I described it earlier, is about only 1 to 3% of the market, right? So we are all fighting for that 1 to 3% of the market. And just the last slide from Dr. Paisan as well, is the big circle and the small circle. I mean, we're all fighting for a very small circle, and it's already very disorganized, right? Is this the correct way forward in terms of going to market, of just doing what we are doing at the present moment, of just a single output, single input kind of world? That is something I think that all of us will have to see what's going to happen. Because honestly, I think it's just a downward spiral moving on. And one more big fact at the present moment in the market is actually oculomics, right, where we're using our eyes to detect different systemic disease in our body. Actually, I find it a bit challenging because honestly, as an ophthalmologist, because we are in the ophthalmology event, right, we will see everything from an ophthalmology perspective, right? But why not you try going to the cardiologist and telling him that something in your heart is now going to tell you something about your eye? Are you, as an ophthalmologist, going to be able to accept that? Let alone we trying to tell the ophthalmologist or the nephrologist, what we are trying to detect or what we're trying to do. And basically, I think, end of the day, it is still about implementation and about adoption. And finally, I think these are the 3 points I'm trying to say, 3 points I'm trying to bring home. End of the day, in order for you to go to market successfully, is to be able to find the person that's going to be paying for the services. You'll be out of their workflow, to be able to change the mindset as well. These are the 3 important factors in order for us to be able to go to market successfully. Finally, I'd like to highlight the opportunities in the Asia-Pacific region. There is a huge aging population in this particular region, especially in North Asia. And it's totally burdening the healthcare system. And the only way to actually solve the problem is actually through technology. And I personally believe that AI will be the center of the engine, the center and the engine to be able to drive the technology moving forward. With that, I thank you, and that comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Just a disclosure. So Stephen is serving as a CSO in the company that I co-founded, AIOS. So, I mean, his last healthcare transformation in Asia Pacific actually gave us a very good segue to the next speaker, Ying Yo. She is the, shall I call her a boss in the Roche in Singapore. So she manages a different division, not just ophthalmology. So she does have, a higher level, bird's eye view in terms of what's going on outside ophthalmology as well. And then, of course, we have a last speaker later, can continue to talk about what, the healthcare transformation in Asia Pacific will look like. So, without further ado, Ying, please. Yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. And actually, it's good to know after Namrata's talk to kind of realize that at least we're doing something that is right in Roche. When you go through it, I was like, oh my God, is she going to say something very different? But good morning, everyone. I'm here representing Roche to really share with you in terms of our interests and how do we actually apply AI in our clinical research. And today we're going to deep dive a little bit into how we apply that in ophthalmology setting. So this is my disclosure. I won't go into this anymore because, as we know, in the pharmaceutical industry, our biggest challenge is really on drug discoveries, right? It's a long process, high investment, success rate is not that high, and it takes a lot of many years and investments to actually come up with one successful product that you would eventually see in the market. But I do feel that, we are actually at a historical point where scientific and medical advancement can now actually converge with data and analytics to really bring us something different to revolutionize drug discovery. In Roche, we believe in combining all these capabilities together, bringing in our research in medicine as well as in diagnostic solution, combining it with data and deep analytics to really change the way we actually do drug discovery. We hope that we'll be able to integrate all this to increase productivity as well as to enhance innovation. And some of these examples are things that, just now Namrata shares in terms of where AI can play a role. So for example, we could actually enhance insights to actually help us to discover new targets faster. We could experiment with different kinds of prediction model and design model with AI and machine learning. One example which we will go into it later. But last but not least, and this is a place where I find it most exciting, right? It's how can we actually really change the way we do clinical trials as well as the way we look at the endpoints of clinical trials. I feel that digitalization has the opportunity to really revolutionize longitudinal research versus what we today take in terms of a snapshot data to really taking an ongoing data and maybe reimagine how we will actually do the trials and look at what is really truly meaningful as a treatment impact. So now let's look into how do we actually apply AI and advanced analytics in ophthalmology. Our research team believe in creating what we call lab in a loop. as the name kind of like, refer to, it's creating a loop where we actually transfer things that we do every day in the lab, feed it into a model where you continues to test and iterate and actually build this continuous learning to actually answer our research question more effectively. For example, how do we do that? So we automate what we do today with human experts, right? On the left is a relatively simple picture, which we do today with human experts, where we sized deletion of GA from a FAF image. In clinical trials, we usually have to use 2 graders to actually look at it and a 3rd senior grader to actually validate any discrepancies, right? And these are the things that we can easily automate with AI. On the right, it's a little bit more complicated. We train human experts to do this, but it is quite laborious. It's not easy to actually quantify an OCT image, and you can't really do it at scale. But with AI, we can actually do that. And the interesting thing is that when we actually feed a lot of these images into the AI model, we're able to actually find different and new insights that actually give us something different to really look at. So for example, we're able to actually design new endpoints in our trials, or actually look at differentiated population, for example, what we did with faricimab trials that we have. But this is just automating for insights. What would be really interesting is that can we actually use this technology to predict lesion growth? And this is where we're bringing it to a different level, right? We were just looking at quantifying the image just now. Now we're really looking at, can it actually predict the growth rate? Similarly, that what we will do actually in trial. So what we do is that we use actually this AI model, and we actually try and really predict GA growth. Of course, we are using historical data here, but if you look at the chart on the right, you can see that, the outcomes of the observed versus the predicted analysis is actually quite interesting, and it could actually explain quite a lot of variability. So why is this important for us? And using GA as an example, it is something that we usually try and look at the mean difference between the growth rates of your treatment arm and your control arm. And sometimes the difference is quite little, and there is, or potentially could be, quite a lot of variability. And this is something that using an AI model and put in what we call a covariate adjustment, it actually helps us to remove a lot of potential imbalance or variability in this segment to give us a more accurate results. So we try and use this retrospectively in one of our, I would say for those who are in the field long enough, more than 10 years ago, we wanted to go into ophthalmology for the first time, right? So lampalizumab is one of our biggest program at that time. And based on what it seems now we know, a seemingly positive phase 2 program, we invested into 2 big phase 3 programs. At that time, of course, we don't have this AI model. We aren't able to do this. But if we would have had this technology back then, we would have known that using that adjusted super covariate adjustment into that model, we would know that it is not a positive study. We wouldn't have invested into 2 huge phase 3 trials, causing us billions of dollars. And not just that, right? Like going into the new area means we have already set up our whole team to be able to actually commercialize this. So when this study didn't read out, we almost have to close down a lot of resources across most of our affiliates in many countries. So this is where we feel that we are at the stage where we can truly change the way we actually do drug discoveries. But it is still not easy. And as some of the speakers have mentioned previously, there is a lot of challenges to this too, right? With data quality, building the model, ethical considerations, and most importantly, it's not easy to actually explain some of these models to people who actually have to make these decisions, right? So hence we believe that, working together, forming strong alliances with leading tech companies, as well as working with the ecosystem together is key to success to really change the way we do drug discovery. With that, thank you for your attention. Thanks.
I'm glad we were aligned. All right, last we have Anastasia from Singapore. She's going to give us a different perspective from the consultant world on AI and digital health insurance for reimbursement models, because that's probably the missing link we have right now.
No, thank you. And I'm very tall, so I'll need this quite high. And, I need to be over here. Oh, okay. Mixing things up again. Consultants over here on the left, right? This is the naughty corner. So as we alluded to, and I think a common theme that we've kind of heard coming up is, show me the money. It takes a lot of money, it requires a lot of money, and who's going to pay for it? I think we spoke previously, and I think Dr. Ang touched nicely in terms of, it's about who's going to utilise it, how do we ensure adoption, but the other side, or the common question and issue with translation, is who's going to pay. And that's really what I'm going to discuss today. We only have less than 8 minutes, so it will be rough and ready, but happy to take any questions after this. I will be sticking around. Won't go through an introduction. The only thing you need to know about me is I love horse riding, and I'm a consultant standing in front of you who's going to talk about money like all good consultants do. Yes, we likely won't get through this agenda, so I will skip over that. I think we've already talked about the trends, so I'll move through that, but I think a lot of the speakers have already talked about the huge opportunity here in Asia Pacific for AI in digital innovation. I don't think that's what we're here to understand today. I'm going to struggle without a microphone. But if you look here over to the right, I think a lot of these issues have been highlighted by some of those, particularly in terms of who pays. And it's not just once you get the product to market, who's actually going to pay for it. Is it going to be the patient? Is it going to be the clinic? Is it going to be the system? Is it going to be the insurer? But equally, even throughout the R&D, as some of our speakers have spoken about, who's going to pay for that? Who pays these billions of dollars in the private sector, or even on the government side in terms of infrastructure building to ensure that even that R&D capability is available? So I'll talk to that today. But other considerations to really think about is Asia Pacific is heterogeneous and reimbursement is no different. When we start to think about who pays, it is market to market, and therefore I won't be able to cover that in the next 8 minutes, but it's important to consider when you're thinking about which markets am I going to target and cover, and who is going to pay throughout the development lifecycle. And that may change because you may be doing R&D in one place, clinical trials in another place, but actually looking to translate in another. So it is important to understand the payers across the life cycle. And so, well, my slides have not translated well in the upload. So there is lots of words hidden there, so just to keep you guessing on what on earth is behind this box. So really, I wanted to kind of challenge here today, because I think often people think about reimbursement in terms of typical reimbursement, either from the public side, where we align to a code, or potentially from the insurer. But like I said, you really need to look at the end-to-end life cycle when thinking about who pays. So that includes things in terms of not just your funding, but the infrastructure development. Does your technology require infrastructure availability, either on the translation side, but even up front in terms of the skills and talent that are needed to create that innovation, to test that innovation, validate that innovation before it's even adopted? And who pays for that? If you've got something that's really pioneering, who's going to pay to update the clinical systems to ensure you've got the data, to ensure there's interoperability so that your AI model is successful? So this is a common notion at the moment, that it's more than just paying per use, but actually who funds the future system to enable the adoption of AI now and into future. And we've already talked about that as well in terms of public-private alliances, not just in terms of government infrastructure and funding. I won't give you a lesson on what reimbursement is, because I assume most of you know, and again, my slides haven't translated, so it's a surprise. But wanted to kind of touch on, and there is so many countries in Asia Pacific. Obviously, we are not going to give you a snapshot of everyone today, but really to start to think about what are the top use cases and what is covered and is not covered at the moment. Where are companies looking at private pathways? Where are companies looking at public pathways, for example? Or also, what are some of these innovative models? And I think for those of you who are looking to go down the pathway of launch and productization of your portfolio, it's understanding, are you going to go through the regulatory pathway and seek public reimbursement in markets where it's available? Are you going to seek more the private coverage side of things in other markets where it is largely out of pocket and or PHI is a requisite? Or are there other more consumer-focused methods for reimbursement that you may consider? So we're seeing here in some markets that are really looking at, going direct to consumer and looking at innovative models such as buy now, pay later and subscription models or roundup models to really look at fast tracking and going straight to consumer. But again, it comes down to your value proposition and ultimately who's going to pay for it and is there a willingness to pay for it. So it's a value question. Oh God, my slides have not done well. So wanted to go through, the 3 key case studies we see in Asia Pacific at the moment and some considerations noting the time because we've only got kind of 2 minutes left. But the common kind of 3 queries we get in terms of will my product be reimbursed or not? I mean, unfortunately, it depends. There isn't kind of very, very concrete guidance at the moment. This is an evolving landscape. I think in terms of the 3 common case studies to think about, or at least archetypes, there's AI software or software as a medical device that is standalone. The second one is AI software that's kind of bundled with a system that's been around and covered for quite a long time in terms of FDA approval. And then the third one, which is what I touched on briefly, is actually boycotting the regulatory pathway and kind of more your public reimbursement schemes and actually looking direct at consumer and looking at more of these innovative funding models where you don't have necessarily a regulated device but still providing health advice. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing and the ethics around that is another question, but not for me to debate with you here today. So I think, generally, if we look across kind of 6 of the common markets in Asia Pacific, if we take AI software, for example, so this is not tied to a device, most of the coverage at the moment is pretty strong if it's tied to radiology. We see a lot at the moment in terms of coverage for radiology. You guys are probably aware of that, particularly in the ophthalmology space. But it's really dependent at the moment on very, very robust clinical evidence, as well as very traditional evidence on that side. So it's not really looking at novel indicators such as digital biomarkers. It is really based on your traditional health economic studies at this stage. But that is changing, particularly in markets like Singapore, Australia and Japan. There's been a lot of revisions and updates in terms of trying to change what is covered and what isn't in future. But as we see in a lot of the other markets at the moment, it is still starkly out of pocket or PHI. Same, if we look at AI devices bundled with systems, I won't go through this in much more detail because this is quite well covered in most markets. It's pretty traditional because hardware is well understood from a regulatory standpoint. Regulators are quite comfortable, so when AI is integrated within that system, it's a lot more likely to be covered. The issue then comes, of course, because there isn't necessarily an additional uplift for the AI that's added, what is that coverage or who's paying for the AI add-on? Because we haven't actually increased coverage rates, it's just covering the system and the AI is added on. So who's actually supporting all that additional value that's being provided? Oh, my slides are going to be cut off. I will skip ahead, but the key one I just wanted you to leave with is the biggest question when thinking about who pays, a couple of things. Along the life cycle, it's not just are you going to be reimbursed when you translate? It's actually who's going to cover the R&D, who's going to get you through that valley of death, who's going to make sure that even if someone will pay to utilize it, someone can even fund the infrastructure, the upskilling, and the investment required to even adopt it so that it can be used, and therefore someone can pay for it. So reimbursement is more than just pay per use. The second side is understanding what's your archetype and how does it align to the right market. And then the third one is thinking beyond just traditional reimbursement pathways, but actually thinking about, are there more innovative models that might accelerate your uptake in market without going through necessarily hard regulatory approvals? So that could be things, a lot of like what we're seeing with AI software apps at the moment, which are going direct to consumer with kind of buy now, pay later. In parallel, whilst these companies are seeking regulatory approval for that clinical validation. Again, that arises some questions on, will clinics adopt it if that's not utilised or if that's not covered, or more importantly, will consumers adopt that due to the payment? So a couple of considerations, and I think it's much broader than just payment, but please consider who's going to pay across the life cycle and who do you need to collaborate with and how do you innovate those models to best translate that payment model. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Maybe I invite all the speakers to come forward to the maybe you guys can actually get seated on the table. I think they should have enough seats for everyone to come forward so that we can actually start inviting questions from the floor. Any question from the audience so far? Yeah, okay,
Hi,
yeah, please fire on while I'm
hi,
waiting
Anastasia. All that I got from your talk was who pays. It was very relevant. Thank you for your talk. I was thinking of one question that Mr. Suhail raised. I mean, AI screening for anemics, right? And combining it with your talk, who pays? I mean, ultimately, it would be a good idea if the hematinics, the guys who make the products to increase the hemoglobin, if that can be combined with the AI tool for the screening, if they pay for it, because ultimately they are going to be benefiting. I'm just giving you a small example of it. But good talk, Anastasia. Thank you.
Any comments about that? Yeah.
So, I mean, thank you for the feedback on the presentation. Sorry it was so short. They were more gracious and didn't cut me off very hard, so thank you. I guess on that, is your question in terms of we think the Gates Foundation should pay for that, or?
No, I'm
sorry.
I mean, the Gates Foundation acts as an intermediary between a company like Roche, who makes hematinics, which increases the hemoglobin level, okay? Because ultimately, if you screen patients with anemia, they're going to need the hematinics to supplement and treat anemia. So ultimately, a company like Roche would benefit. So it would be a collaboration between Gates, Roche, and you.
Sounds like a brewing partnership.
I'm pretty sure Gates Foundation actually did think about this. So maybe you start first, then I'll go to Roche.
Yeah, no, I think fair point, first of all, because, you know, there are many ways to bring down costs, first of all, but I think the easiest way, especially in the context of AI, is to actually create more use cases with the same set of devices that are out there, right? So if a fundus camera can be used for not just detecting glaucoma or diabetic retinopathy, but go beyond that, whether it's anemia or cardio-related indicators. You know, as Gates Foundation, diabetic retinopathy is not a priority area for us, but anemia is. So there'll be willingness to put in funding from our side to do that. So it's something which I think AI just exponentially increase the space for such opportunities to be leveraged.
Yeah, thanks, Hui. I want to go to Ying first and then to Stephen about if you go to hematology conference and tell people that the retina imaging is going to screen for anemia, what's going to happen, right? Okay, Stephen, that's after you. Okay, Ying first, yeah.
Sorry, that one doesn't work. I think it's a great proposal for a use case startup, but I do feel that for sustainable funding, we need to really figure out how to make it more sustainable, right? And I do feel that, you know, at one point we need to make some of these solutions what we say as being seen as also a medical intervention. And, you know, how you analyze it and how you reimburse it shouldn't be very different of how you actually reimburse a drug treatment. And that's a way of how you could also validate how critical, or you know, how it can really truly add, you know, incremental benefit and not just a solution that you just plug in together. Well, at least that's my 2 cents of it.
Yep. Paisan, you have follow up? Yep.
Wants to say something.
Maybe you, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Well, I think this is a very good question. Well, I think it's going to depend on, it's my talk, like private part or public part. If it's private part, I think it may be the hospital that use it, may want to be the one who pay it. But for government, it's very complicated. For example, for my work with Google, like many years, we have all the evidence, like retrospective study, prospective study, and real-world deployment. The government of Thailand, they would like to create their own AI model for diabetic retinopathy, even though we have proof for many years already. They said they want to own it. They want to own it. But, well, Google don't want to, well, owner is the thing, right? Deployment is the thing. They still want to own it because they may want to do something with the model in the future. So if the government want to own it, they may need to like create their own, or they may use another party, maybe the National Health Security Office, it's like NIH, like NHS in the UK to pay for it. So it just depends on the strategy of the government, if it's public sector. Thank you.
Can I just jump in before we go to Dr. Ang on that as well, just to expand that question a bit more? And I know we've kind of picked on Roche and Gates, but it's who pays for what as well. So, okay, we're saying Roche on the R&D, maybe. We're saying, Gates maybe to help, with that innovation, public sector maybe on the reimbursement side, on the use aligned to existing codes. But we've also got to consider, who's going to train the ophthalmologists in terms of, or the optometrists in terms of that identification and that reskilling now that they're moving into a speciality that maybe they may or may not should be in, as well as who's going to make sure the infrastructure is available. And it's notorious at the moment, particularly in Asia Pacific, in terms of the availability of representative data for those models, where there's been a lot of failed trials just because it was suitable in the US, but there isn't representative data in the specific market in Asia Pacific, and that data is very costly to get. So who's going to support that? And then the interoperability into the healthcare system, who's going to support that? Do you expect every hospital to pay for that, for example? So I'd just like to challenge and broaden that it's not so simple of just R&D and who pays for use.
Yes, I have to agree as well. It's actually very much to actually see from the overall workflow perspective, right? Getting the interdisciplinary to agree, I think that part can be driven, especially if we have things like organizations like Gates. But you need to be able to see the point where you pick it up and how you're going to refer the patient and what happens to the patient, the entire patient journey as well. And in the sense of the whole grand scheme of things, we also need to measure the outcome or the health outcome of what actually this particular process means. So I think it's a lot deeper than just based on the R&D approach. Thank you.
So I'm going to switch from the money to actual research, and it's for Ying again. So you talked about all the learnings from the trials. Have you implemented AI in any of your future trials? Are you planning to implement AI?
So actually, what I've shared just now, it's of course a retrospective analysis, right? What we are doing is definitely implementing it in our future trials. I mean, even from, drug discovery and all those things, it are today embedded in it. And that's why, Aviv and the team actually created this concept of lab in the loop, right? Where we actually put generative models into how we actually do our research, not just in ophthalmology. I mean, it is clinical imaging in ophthalmology, but we also do it across our different disease area that we play into. But, to the million-dollar question, and we ask this question too, have we a molecule that we have discovered that, is out in the market? No, the answer is not yet. We did quite a fair bit of more retrospectively identification more with, antibiotics and all those things, and we are successfully able to find new target. We have some early portfolio research molecule, but nothing that is actually physically out there. But it's definitely in what we are doing today.
And what about trial optimization? Have you used for patient selection yet?
Yes. For patient selection, I am not too sure how much we are in there yet. I know we're doing a project. Daniel is trying to really get that into it in terms of, patient trial matching. It's not easy because conventionally how you get it approved and where ecosystem is being set up to actually support it, it's not really there. Like we try to do it for some observational studies where we actually try and do some digitalization observational studies, and even then it's not readily accepted in many countries. So there is some challenges really on the ground in terms of the execution of this.
Yeah, I think this goes back to Dr. Ng's point of there's a lot of great ideas, but the adoption is really small scale on every level, not just the reimbursement, but also research.
Yeah, I think the other, one additional point to consider is that when you actually do AI and implementation, more often than not, you have to think about your EMR system, right? So a lot of these IT infrastructure, some is maybe in the legacy system, but of course, more than 50% of the US hospitals are currently using Epic, but there's many, many more players. So each of these EMR companies is not really talking to each other, and as you know, if you actually do clinical trials, like global clinical trials, you may be handling like 10 different EMR systems within the same trial because it always goes to the PI who can actually recruit the patients. So I think they don't really care what EMR system you're using. So I think this is also is adding on another additional layers of the challenge. Yeah, when you actually try to do AI optimization for clinical trial. Tyson, you have something to
Yeah. Well, it working? It's working now. Okay.
It works now.
May I ask Dr. Namrat how this new U.S. administration's policy is going to affect the future?
Straight to the tough questions.
It's especially AI
It's a
research.
very easy answer. We don't know.
Great.
So I mean, again, I think we're in sort of the transition phase. As you know, there's been a significant change just in the last few days as well. So I think from our perspective, both from the clinical as well as clinical research, we're waiting to see. There's some speculation that there's going to be delays in drug development and approvals, but so far it's really too early to tell. We're hoping, I mean, just in ophthalmology, we've actually had a few people leave, so we are concerned. I'm not going to lie, but it's too early to tell right now.
We support you.
Thank you. Please do. We'll need it.
They need a lot of support now. But maybe I switch gear to the China side, where Ming maybe much more familiar between Hong Kong and China. What's the Chinese and the scene like for reimbursement, regulatory approval, and yeah.
I think in general, the Chinese people, they are very practical. They just want to earn money out of it. So they don't care about who pay for it. But then, just take AirDoc as an example. AirDoc work with so many strategic partners, like for example, like physical examination center, and also this Baodao optical share. I mean, they exchange share, because you earn a lot of money from me, I got to have some share from you, because in particular when you go public. I mean, this kind of logic, they never try to raise money from philanthropy, they just raise money from investor, VC or family office, and then because the ultimate goal is very clear, everybody wanted to, the purpose is to go public, and then everybody have an asset. Or as an inventor, they have and then they have a second tier investment coming, and then they can exit some of their equity. Just for example, in our company, one of the AI expert, I don't want to mention his name, in our second round of fundraise, he already exited $1 million. And so this is they're very practical in general. Yeah.
Yeah. So, question two. I actually picked up one point from Steven, right? Steven actually mentioned that everyone is doing a Hunger Games, and it's like a Games of Thrones within the 1 to 3% pie that everyone is trying to have a bite. So, Steven, how do we unlock the other 97% of the opportunity in healthcare leveraging an AI? Maybe you can share some thoughts on that.
I personally think that the way forward is actually to really look into channels, the channels of where you are able to approach the market. I mean, using China as an example, actually, you can't actually find the Medicare trying to pay for this. It's very, very difficult. And it's actually trying to find the channels that is actually able to pay for the services. I think that's the only way you can actually expand the pie. I think going from a B2C model is extremely difficult unless you have that magic bullet that you can actually trigger that emotion for people to pay for the services. But other than that, I think at the present moment, the payment for AI service from the C sector is actually quite a difficult market to actually penetrate it. Yeah.
Right. Any other questions?
From the audience, maybe?
Yeah, please. Yeah, maybe you can come up to the mic. Yeah. We have lots of time. Apparently, the next session only starts at 1. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry.
Yeah. You will not eat.
Full disclosure from Roche India, so my question is not to you.
You're not going to have to pay for anything else.
Right. No, but I would be interested in a startup's perspective on. I think we've discussed a lot of things ahead in the value chain, which is how to cover for AI-related products. But we are pretty primitive in also in developing AI products. So I do not know, in India that is really the case, and I'm sure in other geographies, also in Europe, data privacy becomes a huge barrier in even conceptualizing and developing such products. So how have you crossed that barrier, Stephen, to make your product AIOS, right?
Yeah, maybe Stephen first, and then we can get Ming and
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't even think I've crossed the valley. I'm still trying to climb up the valley. We can actually see the blood cutting off from all my nails at the present moment. But it is a very difficult uphill task. We have revenue, but I cannot tell you that the revenue is enough to sustain. We are still bleeding at the present moment. So it is not easy. Maybe Meng, you can have you have better experience in this field and longer as well.
No, actually, data privacy or patient privacy is quite important. But as a startup, in the perspective of a startup company, in particular when you apply for FDA clearance, you have to demonstrate two things: where you got the data, do you have permission to utilize the data, develop the AI the product. So this is quite important. But in the perspective of AI startup. But then when you launch the product in like a CE regulatory approval, different world, they don't never ask you where you got the data, do you have a permission. But then I think it's always good that have these two documents ready in your hand. Like you have what data you talk. I mean, these two is quite important for any startup company, AI startup company.
Maybe I just add another layers of complexity there. Even if you think you own the data from the same hospital, but the different countries actually do have different rules. So do patients own the data or the hospital owns the data, right? So I think right now there's a lot of the positioning about hospitals supposed to be the custodian of the data, but do you actually really own it? And even if the data comes to the hospital, can you use it to train AI? So I think there's lots of debates currently in the different, the parts of the world is actually currently discussing about it, debating about this, but I don't think there's any answers, in my knowledge right now. Yeah, Paisan, yeah.
I think for answering your question, for patients who came to the hospital, I think we can have kind of like general consent. Like, we treat you, you allow us to treat you, and for the information, you're going to allow us to use your data for research or something. We can have kind of general consent and explain to the patient. Of course, this is not going to cover everything, but at least it's going to cover some part. I think practically, when you train the data, you need to de-identify all the data, right? When you train it, and once you deploy it, for example, for our job in Thailand, we de-identify all the data when we upload it to AI, and there's no patient data in the AI server, and the AI read images, and then when AI give the result back to you, they're going to delete the images. So there will be no images in the AI server. They just read images. This is the way we do it.
Ying, yep.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just really answering it from a layman perspective, right? I do feel that we have discussed enough of all identified challenges. We know what is the challenges. We know what the concern is. What I personally feel that is missing is a courageous leader from a policymaker to really set what policy it is that allow for this, right? Because you could solve for it. Like a very good example is that ensure consent is being picked up, de-anonymize patient data, create a framework to it, and allow for it, right? And we have lived through this era, right? Like who on earth right now doesn't use e-banking? All your wealth, information, data are all digitalized. If we could do that, why can't we do that with our health data? And in Singapore, we all have a SingPass, we all have an e-identity, right? It is a closed system. It really just take that decision to kind of like, who wants to take the first step? Nobody wants to be the first one, usually, because you don't want any potential error, right? I feel that we probably have good enough knowledge. It's not going to be perfect, but it really just take that one courageous policymaker to really change and roll out a framework, or at least in my perspective.
Yeah, one courageous leader to step up. Any other opinion?
Can I just add to that? There are two distinctive areas in this. One is wherein the AI creator wants the data. So that's where you take the data, and that's where you require a general consent. But if it's the other way around, where the patient gives you the data, then it's like an implied consent. So somebody who comes to me, it becomes like an implied consent. Then I don't need a physical consent. It becomes an implied consent. So there are two different sets of areas in data sets. wherein one in which you require to take the data for your AI tool, and other set is where they give you the data on their own. So, I mean, that's what I'm just adding to your perspective.
Yeah.
Do you all see that the sentiment towards AI is evolving? Because, I mean, from when it started, there was such a negative sort of overlay on this, right? People thought they were just giving their data away and it'll just get lost somewhere and it's going to be used against them. Are we seeing an evolution of that thought process?
Well, I mean, Suhail has some comments to make. Maybe Suhail first. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, so just allow me a minute because I'm going to break this into 2-3 different things. Thank you. One, just in terms of, I mean, sorry, first of all, with all due respect, you know, and Daniel has heard this many times from me, data privacy, personally speaking, is the first world problem. Okay, let's be clear.
It's okay, we are in India now.
So let's not
talk about it freely.
We will reach there, but today 2/3 of the world doesn't care about data privacy. So let's be very conscious of that. I mean, not at the cost of not providing affordable opportunities of getting better services. That's not what the intent should be, right? Having said that, fully respectful of ensuring that it's not misused. And I think that's the role of the government in a big way. And depending on country to country, as you called out, it will vary, right? India, for example, is going through a process of putting across a new act on digital personal data protection. As and when the rules get notified, approved, we'll have a 18-month time window for everybody to comply. But more importantly, I just want to touch upon answering very specific question of the data set challenge, right? And again, I mentioned about the India AI mission earlier. There's a data set platform within it. It's called the AI Kosh, where anonymized and considering all existing laws and provisions being adhered to is being made available for organizations, whether you're a startup, a large diagnostic organization, device organization, tech company, to actually train your models, right? So I think we need to see more of that in other countries. And it's a give and take. You just can't say, hey, I just want to pull everything out from there and not contribute in some way. So that's first. Second, I also believe very strongly that the consent architecture needs to be simpler. I get the point on deemed consent. It's being used, you know, all across India. When you make a UPI transaction, the fact that you opened your smartphone, scanned the code is deemed consent, right? But try and explain this in the context of health, it's not so easy. So we need to find ways to simplify the consent architecture being used. But I think there are ways to solve for this. My final point, unless until everybody as an ecosystem agrees to solve for this problem, this is not going to get solved. So if you just want to leave it to a particular set of the stakeholders in the ecosystem to solve, I think it's going to be very hard. I do believe there are learnings that we have across different countries which we need to put together and just work together with the policymaker and decision makers.
Yep. Questions? Yep, please come up to the mic. Yep.
Actually, my knowledge of AI is, I would say, less than basic, I should say. But as a layperson, let's put it that way, as a layperson, the question of data privacy is now a growing concern, even in India. Because, you know something, like if I'm scrolling through something on my smartphone, like if I'm playing a game, take for example, I'm playing Candy Crush, and there is a ad in the middle, or I'm scrolling Facebook, and there is an ad for Metro shoes or something else, whatever. The very next moment, within millimeters of seconds, that will pop up on my smartphone again. So where is the data privacy? There is an eye being kept on you, I think 24/7, 365 days in a year. Somebody has your data. I don't know who that someone is, but your data is out there in the public domain.
Not even clicking. Do you realize sometimes your conversation within the spouse,
Yes, absolutely.
it also started to pop up? I initially invited another ex-Google person here to speak. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. So this question would be very, very ideal for her to answer because, like Google's and, they have a lot of the big egress of the stuff because of the ethical use of AI in a lot of the advertisements and stuff. Yeah.
You rightly mentioned that even if you're having a conversation with your spouse on something and you open your smartphone, something.
You see Tokyo.
You see Thailand, you see Tokyo, you see Dubai. You've been talking about it. So that means, where are we going from here?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's a growing concern. And, we are talking about SAMD, pixel-based, right? We haven't even talked about large language models, right? So last 2.5 years, you saw like OpenAI currently is still having like a lawsuit with New York Times, and there's Huckabee et al. With 3 big tech companies and many, many more. So I think right now, I think the US copyrights law, you still don't, there's 4 big main rules that you guys can go back to read. And right now, there is still not very, any certainties about which way, and of course with this new administration also just came out, I'm not very sure when is this issues going to be solved. But yeah, the data privacy, the data concern is in fact is real, right? Ownerships, yeah. So I think this is something that as an ecosystem, we kind of have to kind of figure out ourselves. Yeah. Any other questions so far? Any other points to make? I do have one for Suhail, right? We talk a lot about sustainability of startup financing and scalability. I just wanted to actually also get Suhail to comment a little from the philanthropic standpoint. After you pump in about, say, $2 billion from foundations to fund, say, 3,000 patients to screen for anemia, who is supposed to take over the program? Because I'm pretty sure you guys are constantly thinking about this. In Singapore, we also do have a foundation called Temasek Foundations, same thing. So the moment that they put in like a double digits or triple digits million funding to start a program, someone has to own it. How do you guys approach this?
Yeah, so, first of all, sustainability is a concern everywhere, right? And I think it's growing because a lot of the development sector funding coming from whether bilaterals or multilaterals or even countries contributing to it is shrinking for valid reasons. I'm not questioning that part of it. So there is a concern. From a Gates Foundation standpoint, most of our technical assistance or funding goes more on the innovation side, to be honest, not so much on the service delivery. So we are still a drop in the ocean when it comes to the overall funding required for delivering the services, and that's up to the governments, right? And government could use their own funding or seek financing mechanisms available to them. The answer is pretty clear, right? There is, like everything else, there is a segmentation that is available today, and I'm going to take examples of organizations that are maybe familiar to many of you here. Remedio, Forest Health. Right? Today, I may be not getting the exact numbers, but I believe Remedio's market share in the US is, if not the largest, the second largest. They are able to get the monetization done from the investments and the market space they managed to get in the US, use that amount for subsidizing a lot of services that they provide in countries like India, right? So a DR mass screening that is done in India using Remedio is at a less than $4 per screening cost. And they are pretty confident with additional use cases, they can bring it down to less than $1. Now that's something that governments can afford to pay. It's part of the insurance scheme that the country has, right? So it's a covered cost. But if this was $100, $200, $300 per screening, no way that the government, at least the low middle income countries, could afford to do it. So you'll have to find that balance, right? And I think every company is wanting to figure out to get that balance right.
You're absolutely right, and I think the prime example, the first one was IDX in the US, and it had a really great start, but there was no reimbursement model for it or subsidized model, and it really was not successful at all. So I think that's the biggest challenge commercially we're noticing is these are great solutions, but adoption is going to be hard.
Anna, or Ying, any follow-up comments?
Yeah, I think just to escalate on the adoption side of things, because I know, as the consultant, I'm here about who pays, but, ultimately it's a behavioural change as well. And a lot of the friction we see even before we get to who pays on the commercialisation side of things is the behavioural change. It needs to be faster, cheaper, easier, better than the current standard of care, which standard of care is obviously non-standard, but we use that word anyway. So I think that's just important to consider because like you said, yes, there's getting to the reimbursement model and making sure it can actually be monetized ultimately, otherwise it's not viable. It could be desirable, could be feasible, but it's not commercially viable and therefore it's not sustainable. But actually, can it even be embedded into the current practice? And that could be on the clinical side, but same on the consumer side. We see a lot of great AI innovations, for example, but they add friction to the user. And although there might be a small subset that goes, that's novel, that's awesome, I'm a health advocate and so therefore I will use it, a lot of others won't. They'll use it for the novelty, but they won't have that sustained utilization because it adds friction to the journey. So I think that's the most important barrier that we see even before we get to payment. That is it cheaper, faster, easier, better than the current standard. Otherwise it won't be adopted and then who cares who pays for it because no one wants to use it.
I think it'll be interesting to see how generational this is going to be because I do see a difference of how my 20-year-old nephews look at all of this versus how we look at it. So I think we're going to have more adoption because of the generation growth.
There's a great report that I'll have to find that was just released on a study of like Gen Z and their attitudes towards healthcare that was just globally published. I'll find the link and share it around. But exactly that. And their biggest concern is actually on mental health. But they are more focused on getting insights from Instagram, TikTok than their clinician. So I think it's not just changing the behaviour of using digital, but actually who they interact with. And, do all our ophthalmologists now need to get on TikTok?
What do you mean they're not on TikTok?
If not already.
Yeah. So there's also another movement in, the healthcare space, in the longevity space. I'm not sure whether you guys are aware of that. I think both Stephen and Ming talked about how you could use eye to view into your systemic health. So last year in AAO, Topcon and Microsoft have just launched a partnership, right? To look at whether I could actually, in fact, be used for the wellness space. And as you know, for between the medical space versus the wellness space, medical space is highly regulated. So SAMD, you need a prospective clinical trials and a bunch of things. On the other hand, you see like the wellness space right now, the supplement space, and you have like people like Brian Johnson's popping like 100 pills a day just to try to live to 100 years old. And a lot of these things are currently still not regulated yet. So just wanted to ask the panel here, right? Some of you have actually done AI. Do you think I could be a very important biomarkers into the longevity health? Just wanted to open up to, Ying, I know you are a longevity, the health enthusiast. Like maybe we start with you first. Right?
How many supplements do you take a day?
I don't. I don't.
101.
I'm not a believer of the extreme. But I do find the art and science of longevity very interesting. And I can't answer whether the eye could be a peer in the future of your health, right? But I do feel that the wellness field is growing.
And who's going to pay for it? Yeah.
And who's going to pay for it? And this is where, this is my personal perspective, right? Like, I think we are in a world where more and more health and wellness, it's a very consumerism kind of behavior, right? Today, does anyone dictate you whether you wear a $500 dress or a $5 dress? No, right? So why should they dictate whether I eat a $5 pill or a $500 pill? But of course, there is the question of equity, accessibility for the white population when it comes to wealth and health, which you feel that is available for all. But I'm also not naive enough to feel that the world is fair. The world is not fair. Unfortunately, it is not, right? Like where we grow up very much dictates how we lead our life, and it all are slightly different. So I do feel that while the field will grow, where we now need more framework is that, how do you actually allow for this? How do you also regulate and ensure that it is safe? Because while, the art and science of wellness have grown, the science out there on this field is just mind-boggling. I don't know how safe it is. How safe it is for Brian Johnson to be popping 100 over pills? I'm not sure. I can't answer it. And do I pop any pills too? I don't.
Sounds like a good test. Who will live longer?
But I do my own self-experiment in terms of the diet that I do, the sleep that I have, the exercise that I do, and how does it actually affect my parameters, right? Because I am curious, and we are all in the science field. I just run my own self-experiment too. But yeah, I would love to have slightly more regulation, but I don't think I want it to dictate what I should have or what I shouldn't have.
Maybe, just to add to that, and, Suhail will be pleased with this, but, the wellness space is very much a first world problem at the moment as well in terms of longevity. Even in the US, there's been a whole heap of studies in terms of social determinants of health, and really in terms of wellness, experimentation with longevity, etc., it's very much in higher income demographics versus lower income demographics, where there isn't even that financial capability to start to look at longevity. They're very much focused on acute care. I think on the second point, just to add some data to the topic, really recent studies have looked at, particularly in Asia Pacific, and this is looking across Asia Pacific, so I know there's obviously disparities, but generally at least 1 in 3 persons say that they are willing to pay for better health outcomes, particularly in wellness. But interestingly, if you look at the data on are they actually paying for it, so what's been spoken versus where are they putting their money, there isn't a lot of expenditure in preventative health yet. So I think there's intention, and we're definitely seeing that surge. Is it converting to hard dollars yet of people actually expending in that space? No, they still very much expect that as free apps on their phone, for example, or at a minimum cost. So how to monetize that space, I think, is still to be confirmed. And if it's snake oil or not is the other question.
I'm just gonna add one thing to it. It's also very trendy. The trends have overtaken the actual health and wellness space.
Yeah, well, I think your point is similar to kind of like the company called 23andMe.
Yeah.
So, well, Ashley is going bankrupt at the moment. So I think we need more evidence, right? Well, you may have like early adopters, the user to pay for this, but if the future it leads nowhere, it's not going to go anywhere.
So that's a really good example of, even though there was something there, they didn't have a business model.
Yes.
Right. So this goes back to all the translation aspect of it as well.
Yep. So I think with these, okay. So just before I close, for those of you who don't know who Brian Johnson is, if you have Netflix, please go back and watch Don't Die, and after that, you understand what is a hardcore biohackers do to itself, including blood transfusion between the 3 different generations. But try not to do that. Okay.
Now that you mentioned Netflix, one thing you should watch is Live Till 100, The Secrets of the Blue Zones.
It's a good show. And people want to read more about this. I know it's something irrelevant to us, but since we're talking about longevity, Peter Attia, David Sinclair's, and Andrew Myers.
I clearly know what he does.
But these are some of the names that you can actually read out. With this, thank you, and have your good lunch. We'll see you, in the next few sessions in AI, and enjoy the stay. Thank you.
Thank you, toasts.
Maybe we take a group photo. Then we Photoshop like Ming and. The AI technology is quite advanced nowadays anyway. Yep. Habilan, first. Okay, the middle first.